Welcome to the English Pod community. I'm Blake, and in today's episode, we're going to talk about how to improve your listening skills. This is important for not just understanding spoken English better, but also for writing and speaking more naturally. As you listen to some real-life stories in today's episode, you'll practice hearing how native speakers sound in everyday conversations, which will help you become more confident when you're speaking or writing in English. Before we dive in, let me ask you a couple of questions. Have you ever found yourself struggling to understand someone when they speak quickly? Or maybe you've been in a situation where you know what you want to say, but the words just don't come out right? If you've experienced this, then you're not alone. This episode is here to help you overcome those challenges. Now, if you're new here, welcome to the English Pod community. On this channel, we upload videos every day to help you improve your English, so make sure you subscribe, and don't forget to press the like button if you find this episode helpful. Now, let's get started. I remember a time when I had to attend a business meeting in a foreign country. At first, I found it difficult to keep up with the conversation. The people spoke quickly, and I had to ask them to repeat themselves multiple times. But over time, I realized that the key to improving my listening wasn't just about hearing the words, it was about understanding the context and the flow of the conversation. For example, I once had a conversation with a colleague named Sarah. We were talking about a project we were working on together, and she mentioned something about an issue with the client. At first, I didn't quite catch everything she said, but I understood the general idea because of the way she expressed herself. She used some key phrases like, "We need to fix this quickly," and "the client is expecting results." Those phrases helped me guess what the conversation was about, even if I missed a few details. This is a key point. Don't focus too much on understanding every single word. Instead, focus on understanding the overall message. I want to give you a few tips that will help improve your listening skills. Practice with different accents. English is spoken in many different ways around the world. In my experience, I've listened to people from the UK, Australia, and even parts of India. At first, it was hard to understand them. But with practice, I got used to the different accents. Try listening to podcasts or watching videos from different regions, and you'll get used to hearing different sounds and pronunciations. Listen to conversations, not just words. When you listen to someone speaking, don't just focus on the words they're saying. Try to pay attention to their tone and how they pause or emphasize certain things. This will help you understand the meaning behind the words. I remember a time when I was talking to my friend David. He was explaining something to me about a project, but it was his tone and the way he stressed certain words that made it easy to follow along. You see, how someone says something is just as important as what they say. Practice shadowing. Shadowing is when you listen to someone speaking and try to repeat what they say, just like a shadow follows you. This is a great way to improve both your listening and speaking skills. I've used this technique many times when I was learning new languages. It helps you get used to the rhythm and flow of the language. Plus, it's a fun way to practice. Learn to predict what will be said next. When you listen to a conversation, try to predict what the speaker will say next. For example, if your colleague says, "We need to finish this project by Friday," you might predict that they will continue with, "Can you finish your part by Thursday?" This will help you stay focused and prepare for the next part of the conversation. Stay patient and persistent. Don't get frustrated if you don't understand everything at first. It takes time to build your listening skills, and the more you practice, the better you'll get. Think of it like learning to ride a bike. You won't be perfect the first time, but if you keep practicing. Now, let's take a look at a real-life example from my own experience. A few years ago, I was talking to a colleague named Mark about a project we were working on together. Mark spoke very quickly. And at first, I found it difficult to follow. But then, I started focusing on the key words and phrases he was using. For example, he said, "We need to move fast," and "Let's meet tomorrow to finalize the details." These phrases helped me understand what he was talking about, even though I missed some of the other words. This is a great strategy to use when you're listening to native speakers. Focus on the important phrases and try to guess the meaning of the rest. So, now that we've talked about a few helpful tips, let's go deeper and explore how listening is more than just a skill. It's actually a habit. And just like any habit, it gets stronger the more you use it. Let me tell you about a real situation that helped me improve my own listening. A few years ago, I was working with a team on a new training project. One of the team members, Emily, was very experienced and had great ideas, but she spoke fast and used a lot of technical words. At first, I felt lost in the conversation. Every time we had a meeting, I would try to catch every single word she said. And guess what? That made me more nervous, and I ended up missing even more. Then one day, something changed. I stopped focusing on every single word, and instead, I focused on understanding the main message. Emily said, "We need to simplify the layout so the users don't feel confused. Let's focus on clear instructions and easy steps." Even though I didn't catch everything, I understood what she meant, and that helped me respond better. I said, "You mean we should make it more user-friendly and remove anything extra?" She smiled and said, "Exactly." That one small success gave me the confidence to keep going. And that brings us to one important lesson. You don't have to understand every word to understand the conversation. Focus on the idea, not the individual words. This is something many English learners forget. They worry so much about vocabulary that they forget the big picture. But native speakers don't always speak perfectly. Sometimes we use short forms, or we change the sentence halfway through. And that's okay. Your job as a listener is to follow the meaning, not just the grammar. Here's another helpful trick. Use your imagination when listening. For example, imagine someone is telling you about their weekend. Even if you don't understand every detail, you can picture the story in your mind. That makes it easier to follow. I once had a conversation with a friend named James. He was telling me about his weekend trip with his wife. He said, "We drove up to the mountains, stayed at a small guest house, and spent the whole morning hiking along the river." Now, I had never been to that place before, but I could imagine the road, the hills, and the river. That mental picture made the conversation more clear, more real. So, when you listen to someone, try to see what they're saying in your mind. It helps more than you think. Also, don't be afraid to ask questions or repeat what you think you heard. This is not a weakness. It's a powerful tool. One day, I was speaking with Daniel, a new coworker. He said something like, "The system backend is being migrated this week." I wasn't sure what he meant, so I said, "Are you saying the technical team is moving the system to something new?" He said, "Yes, they're updating the platform behind the scenes." See? Just a short question helped me understand everything, and it also showed him I was really listening. Native speakers do this too. It's completely normal to ask for clarification. Now let's talk about something you can practice today. Active listening. This means giving your full attention when someone is speaking. That means no distractions, no checking your phone, no thinking about your shopping list. Just focus on the speaker. If you train yourself to really focus, your brain will start catching more and more details automatically. Let me give you an example. I was at a team lunch with my coworkers, David, Laura, and Rebecca. Everyone was talking, laughing, and speaking quickly. It was a bit noisy, and it would have been easy to miss half the conversation. But I made a decision. I would focus on one person at a time. I looked at Laura when she spoke and tried to understand the key idea. She said, "The new process feels smoother, but there are still a few issues with the final report." I caught the main point, and that helped me jump into the conversation. I said, "Are the issues related to formatting or missing data?" She nodded and said, "Mostly formatting." That simple moment came from just focusing. You can do the same. Start with people around you. If you're married, try it with your husband or wife. When they speak, give full attention. Even if they're talking about small things like groceries or housework, practice listening. Every conversation is a chance to improve. I've seen learners grow from shy speakers to confident communicators just by building this habit. Let's go even further. One great way to improve listening is to listen and write. Yes, writing helps your listening. How? Because when you listen and try to write what you hear, your brain gets sharper. You train your ears to catch sounds, phrases, and grammar. I remember helping a student named Rachel. She was preparing for an exam and needed to improve both her listening and writing. So, I told her to choose a short podcast every day, listen to a few minutes, and write down what she heard. At first, she only understood about 50%, but after a week, she was catching almost 80% of the words. And more than that, her writing became more natural too. So, if you're serious about improving your English, try this method. It's simple but powerful. Another thing that helps is repeating. When you hear a phrase or sentence that sounds natural, pause and repeat it out loud. This is not only good for listening, but also helps with speaking. I used this method myself when I was learning another language. For example, if I heard a native speaker say, "I'll handle it after lunch," I would pause and repeat, "I'll handle it after lunch," 3 or 4 times. This made the phrase feel natural in my mouth. Later, when I needed to say something similar, it came out easily and confidently. Here's a tip. Write down the phrases you like. Keep a small notebook or use your phone. Every time you hear a useful sentence, write it down. Later, read it, say it out loud, and try to use it. For example, phrases like, "I'll get back to you," or "that makes sense," are common in real conversations. When you know them, you'll start understanding more and speaking better too. Let's go back to another real story. I was once in a small town for a work event. I didn't know anyone there, but I met a local businessman named Henry. He invited me to join him for tea in his office. We sat down and had a long chat about life, family, and business. He spoke slowly and clearly, but sometimes he used words I didn't know. I didn't panic. I just listened, watched his face, and followed the meaning. When I didn't understand something, I asked, "Do you mean that the sales have dropped? Or are you saying the market is different now?" And every time he helped me understand more. That conversation stayed with me because it showed me that listening is also about connecting. Now, I want to talk about something very important, your mindset when listening in English. Many learners feel nervous or uncomfortable when they listen to fast English. They think, "I don't understand everything, so maybe I'm not good at this." But that's not true. The truth is, even native speakers don't understand every single word in every situation. Think about a busy airport, a crowded street, or a phone call with bad sound. People miss things sometimes. The key is learning how to stay calm and keep listening. That's where you make progress. Let me share a story about a man named Thomas. He moved to Canada from another country and started working in a hotel. In his first week, he felt very stressed. The guests spoke fast, sometimes with different accents, and used idioms he had never heard. One day, a guest came to the front desk and said, "Hey, do you know if the shuttle's running today? I'm trying to catch a ride to the terminal." Thomas froze. He understood shuttle and terminal, but the rest sounded like a blur. Instead of panicking, he smiled and said, "Could you please repeat that more slowly?" The guest said it again. "Is the hotel shuttle running? I need a ride to the airport terminal." That second time, it made sense. And after that moment, Thomas decided to carry a small notebook with him. Every time he heard a new phrase, he would write it down, look it up later, and practice it. After 1 month, he could understand the guests much more easily. That's something you can learn from. If you hear something new, write it down. If you hear something again and again, pay attention. Repetition means it's probably a common phrase or expression. These are golden learning moments. And guess what? That's exactly how native speakers grow too, by hearing something many times and finally understanding how it works. Now, let's talk about listening to real conversations. Podcasts like this one are a great way to do that. But there's another method too. Listen to real-life situations. That could be phone calls, work meetings, job interviews, public announcements, or family discussions. When you listen to real conversations, you start to notice how English sounds naturally. People pause, people repeat, people speak with emotion. These are not like textbook sentences. This is real communication. Let me give you an example. I had a friend named Olivia who worked in customer service. She would often listen to customer calls as part of her training. At first, it was hard. People complained, asked complicated questions, or spoke too quickly. But she kept listening. She listened to one call 5 times, then 10 times. She would pause, repeat, write things down, and even speak along with the recording. Over time, her ears became stronger. She started to catch tone, attitude, and meaning, not just words. She once told me, "Blake, I don't just listen to the words anymore. I listen to the feeling." And that was a powerful insight. Sometimes how people say something is even more important than what they say. That brings us to a very useful skill, listening for tone and emotion. For example, if someone says, "I guess we could do that," but they sound unsure, they might not really want to do it. If someone says, "That's great," with a happy voice, they probably mean it. But if they say it slowly with no emotion, maybe they're not impressed. As you listen to more English, start paying attention to the tone. This helps you understand meaning faster. Now, let's practice a little in your mind. Imagine a man named Edward is speaking to his wife after a long day at work. He says, "I'm tired, but I'll take care of the dishes. Don't worry." What do you think his tone would be? Maybe kind, maybe calm, maybe a little tired, but also loving. Now imagine he said the same words with an angry voice. "I'm tired, but I'll take care of the dishes. Don't worry." That changes everything, right? The words are the same, but the tone is different. That's why listening carefully helps you not only understand the words, but also understand the message behind the word. Let's keep going with another story. There was a woman named Sarah. She was learning English while raising her kids and running her small business. She didn't have much free time, so she made a habit. Every morning, she would listen to one short story in English while cooking breakfast. She didn't try to understand every word. She just listened and tried to feel the meaning. Sometimes, it was a story about a person's daily routine. Sometimes, it was about a business decision or a personal challenge. She found that listening every day, even for just 10 minutes, helped her brain stay active in English. And after 3 months, she could follow fast conversations more easily. It wasn't magic. It was consistency. That's a great lesson for all of us. You don't have to listen for hours. Just listen often. Even short moments help. But do it every day. Make it a part of your life, like brushing your teeth or drinking water. The more you do it, the more natural English sounds. And here's another practical idea. Create listening environments. That means surround yourself with English as much as possible. When you're cleaning your room, play an English story. When you're walking or taking the bus, listen to a short English conversation. When you're with friends who speak English, try to join the talk, even just by listening at first. This turns your world into a place where English is normal. The more your brain hears the rhythm and patterns of English, the more it will learn naturally, without stress. I remember talking to a young man named Mark. He told me he was too shy to speak English, but he loved to listen. So he started following one English podcast every morning. He would listen while getting ready for work. After a few weeks, he started repeating some of the phrases out loud. Then, one day at work, someone asked him, "Hey Mark, what do you think about the new project?" And for the first time, he replied confidently, "I think it's a good idea. We should keep it simple." It was a small sentence, but it was a big moment for him. Listening had prepared him for speaking. This shows that listening is not only about understanding, it also helps you speak better. The more you listen, the more words and phrases you collect in your brain. These words are like building blocks. When the time comes, you can use them naturally. You don't need to memorize long lists. Just listen, understand, and repeat. Over time, your speaking will improve without even trying hard. Another tip I want to share is write a short summary after listening. This is powerful. Let's say you listen to a 5-minute English story. After listening, take 2 minutes and write down what you understood. Don't worry about perfect grammar, just write the main points. For example, you might write, "The story was about a man who lost his job. He started his own business with support from his wife. Now he helps others who are in the same situation." That's enough. When you write after listening, your brain makes connections between sounds, words, and ideas. This makes your English stronger. One last thing for now, believe in yourself. You're not too slow. You're not behind. Everyone starts somewhere. Listening is not easy, but it gets better every day. If you're listening to this podcast now, you're already doing the right thing. Keep going. Keep practicing. And remember, we're here with you every step of the way. Let's keep moving forward with this. I want to dive deeper into how you can make listening part of your everyday routine. It's all about finding moments to practice. You might be thinking, "But I don't have time to sit down and study English every day." I get it. Life is busy, but trust me, you can make listening to English a part of everything you do. Let me share a few more ideas. Let's say you're cooking dinner. You don't need to stop what you're doing just to practice English. Instead, put on an English podcast while you're chopping vegetables or stirring the pot. It's a simple way to make English a normal part of your life. And it's not just about listening. It's about getting used to hearing English in a relaxed way. You don't need to understand every word. You just need to hear the rhythm and the flow. Over time, it will start to feel natural. Let's imagine a woman named Emma. Emma works from home, and she has a lot of meetings in English. But her English wasn't perfect at the start, and she often felt nervous about joining conversations. So she decided to try something new. She started listening to English during her daily walks. She would put in her earphones, listen to an English podcast, and walk for 20 minutes. In the beginning, she had to pause and replay some parts. But after a few weeks, she noticed a change. She was able to understand more clearly, and when she joined her meetings, she felt much more confident. It wasn't about long study sessions. It was about turning everyday moments into learning opportunities. Another great tip is listening to the news in English. I know, it sounds like a challenge at first. The news can be fast and full of complicated words. But here's the secret. You don't need to understand everything. Focus on the big ideas. Let's say you're listening to a news report about a new law or a major event. You might not understand every word, but you can probably guess the topic, right? That's the goal. The more you do this, the better you'll get at understanding the overall message without stressing about every single word. A friend of mine named James tried this method. He would listen to the news in English for 10 minutes every morning before work. At first, he didn't get much of it. The vocabulary was tough, and the accents were different. But over time, he noticed he could follow the stories better. He understood the main ideas and felt more comfortable talking about them with his friends and colleagues. Eventually, he even started following the news in English about topics he was passionate about, like technology and business. His vocabulary grew, and so did his confidence. Now, let's talk about something a little different. Listening to podcasts on topics that interest you. This is one of the most powerful ways to improve your listening skills. Think about it. If you're listening to something you enjoy, you're more likely to stick with it. Whether it's sports, cooking, history, or even stories about people's lives, find podcasts in English that match your interests. The more you listen to something you care about, the more motivated you will be. Let me give you a story about a guy named David. David was a big fan of cars. He loved everything about them. The design, the engines, the history. So he started listening to English podcasts about cars. At first, he didn't understand everything. There were words he didn't know, and sometimes the speakers used technical language. But David kept listening. He would pause when he didn't understand, look up new words, and then play the podcast again. After a few months, David realized he wasn't just learning about cars. He was learning new English vocabulary, improving his listening, and even getting better at speaking. His love for cars made the learning process much easier and more enjoyable. And here's another thing I want to share: the importance of listening for different accents. In English, there are many accents: British English, American English, Australian English, and more. Each one has its own unique sounds and pronunciations. At first, this can be overwhelming, but the more you expose yourself to different accents, the better you'll get. You'll start to recognize certain patterns and phrases, no matter how the speaker says them. Next, I want to talk about active listening. Active listening means that you're not just hearing the words, but you're also thinking about what they mean, how they fit together, and how the speaker feels. It's a skill that can really improve. You're listening and writing at the same time. For example, if you listen to a story, think about the structure of the story. How does it begin? What happens in the middle? How does it end? And how does the speaker use certain words to connect? Ideas? Let's say you listen to a story about a couple, Rachel and John, who went on a road trip. The story starts with Rachel feeling excited about the trip, but later, John becomes frustrated because they get lost. How does the speaker describe their feelings? What words do they use to show their emotions? Listening carefully to these details helps you understand how language is used in real life. It also improves your ability to write better because you're learning how to organize ideas and use language effectively. Now, let's talk about a very practical method for improving your listening skills: shadowing. Shadowing is when you listen to a speaker and try to repeat exactly what they say at the same time. It's like you're shadowing their voice. This technique helps you improve both your listening and speaking skills. The goal is not to understand every word immediately, but to practice the rhythm, intonation, and pronunciation of English. I'll tell you a story about my friend Alex. Alex wanted to improve his English for work because he had to give presentations in English. He decided to use shadowing to practice. Every day, he would listen to a TED Talk or an interview and repeat everything the speaker said. At first, it was hard, but over time, Alex got better at matching the speaker's pace and tone. He started to feel more confident when speaking English at work. His colleagues even noticed that his presentations were smoother and clearer. Shadowing helped him more than he expected. If you want to try this, choose a podcast or video with PodSpeak Clear Speech. Start by listening to 1 or 2 sentences, then pause and repeat them. Don't worry if you don't understand everything right away. Focus on mimicking the sound, not on getting everything perfect. The more you do this, the more natural your speaking and listening will become. Finally, remember that patience is key. Language learning takes time. You might not notice huge progress every day, but small improvements add up. The key is to keep going, even on the days when it feels difficult. Listening gets easier the more you do it, and soon you'll find that you can understand much more than you thought possible. So, start using these techniques in your daily life. Incorporate English into your routine. Practice active listening. Try shadowing. And most importantly, enjoy the process. The more you expose yourself to English, the better you'll get. Keep up the great work. And when you feel ready, we'll continue from here. Now let's explore how real-life situations can help you improve your listening skills even more. When you listen to real conversations or real stories, you're not just hearing words. You're understanding how people use English in everyday life. This is so important because in real conversations, people speak naturally. They use expressions, they pause, they ask questions, and they respond based on what the other person says. And this is exactly the kind of English you need to understand if you want to speak fluently and naturally. Let me share a story about Sophie, who moved to a new city for her job. Sophie was a nurse, and although she had studied English in school, she didn't feel confident listening to patients or coworkers. In meetings, people spoke fast. In the hospital, there were announcements and emergency instructions. Sometimes patients spoke with different accents or used informal words. Sophie felt lost. But instead of giving up, she started writing down what she heard during the day. If she didn't understand something, she would go home and look it up. She also recorded parts of her day using her phone and tried to repeat conversations to herself later. After just 3 months, she became more confident. She could follow discussions in meetings, understand her patients more clearly, and even explain things in English without fear. She didn't need a textbook. She used real life to learn. Here's another example. Tom and his wife, Sarah. Tom is learning English because he wants to work in another country. His wife speaks better English than he does, and they decided to practice together every evening. What did they do? They picked one real story every day to listen to. Sometimes it was a personal story from a podcast, sometimes a conversation from a YouTube channel, and sometimes a real interview from someone's experience. After listening, they would pause and discuss it in English. They'd ask each other, "What happened next?" Or, "Why do you think he said that?" This helped Tom improve not just his listening, but also his thinking in English. He didn't need to translate everything in his head anymore. Over time, he started using English naturally, and his listening improved quickly. Another useful method is note-taking while listening. This might sound simple, but it's very effective. When you listen to a story or a conversation, don't just listen passively. Take a notebook and write down the main points. Don't write every word. Just note the important ideas. For example, if someone is telling a story about their job, write works at a bakery, wakes up early, customer asked for refund, boss supported him. These small notes help you stay focused, and when you read them later, they help you remember the story more clearly. Let's think about a man named Daniel, who used to struggle with listening tests. In class, he would always panic when the audio started playing, so his teacher gave him a tip. While listening, take short notes, even just 2 or 3 words per sentence. Daniel tried it, and it helped him stay calm and focused. Now, when he hears a story, he listens for the main ideas, writes short notes, and then reviews them to make sure he understood. He's not scared of listening tests anymore, and he even helps his classmates learn this method too. Now let's talk about listening with purpose. This means before you listen, ask yourself, what am I listening for? Are you trying to understand the general idea? Are you listening for feelings like happiness, anger, or surprise? Are you trying to learn new words or how questions are asked? Having a goal helps your brain focus. It's like when you go shopping, you don't look at every single item in the store. You focus on what you need. Listening is the same. If you focus on one goal, you will learn faster and understand better. For example, imagine you're listening to a story about Michael, a teacher who had a difficult day at school. Before listening, ask yourself, what made his day difficult? Then, while you listen, focus on that question. Was it the students? Was it the school rules? Was it something personal? When you listen with a purpose, you don't feel lost. You have a reason to listen, and this keeps you engaged. Let's also talk about how writing connects to listening. You may not realize it, but listening can actually improve your writing skills too. How? Because when you hear how people speak, how they tell stories, how they organize ideas, how they use grammar, you start to understand the natural flow of English. And when you sit down to write, you'll remember those patterns. For example, when you listen to someone say, I was walking to work when I saw something strange, you're learning how to use past continuous and past simple together. You're also seeing how to start a story and keep someone interested. If you hear this kind of sentence enough times, you'll start using it in your own writing without even thinking about it. Here's a real story from a man named Chris, who was studying for the IELTS exam. He wanted to get a high score in writing, but his essays were too simple. His teacher told him to start listening to more English stories and take notes on how speakers connect ideas. So Chris started listening to everyday stories, like one about a man whose car broke down in the countryside. Chris noticed how the speaker used linking words like however, because, and so. He began using the same words in his writing. In a few weeks, his writing became more natural and fluent, and his score improved. Now here's something powerful you can try. Retelling a story in your own words. After you listen to a story, try to say it again using simple English. You can say it aloud or write it down. Don't worry if it's not perfect. The goal is to help your brain remember. Imagine a man named Andrew. Andrew works in a bakery. Every morning he wakes up early and prepares bread and cakes. At first he thought he didn't have enough time to study English, but then he had an idea. He started playing English audio, lessons on his phone while baking. At first he didn't understand much, but he kept listening. After a few weeks, he noticed something. He could understand more and more. He was learning new words without even realizing it. And sometimes, when he heard the same story again, he could predict what was going to be said next. That showed him his brain was getting better at understanding English. The same thing happened to Rachel, a mother of 2 young children. She always had a busy day, cooking, cleaning, and helping her kids. But she also wanted to improve her English. So she made a plan. Every time she did chores, like washing dishes or folding clothes, she listened to English. She started with slow audio, then moved to real conversations. After a month, she said, "I understand more now than I did in school." She also said she was starting to think in English when doing simple tasks. This is how powerful everyday practice can be. Here's another method that works well: listening with a partner. Let's take the example of Ben and his wife Emily. They decided to study English together. Each night after dinner, they would listen to a short conversation or a story. Then they would pause and ask each other questions in English like, "What did he say?" Or, "Why did she do that?" This helped both of them improve faster. When you listen with someone else, you get a chance to talk, explain, and share your ideas. This makes the listening active, not passive, and that's very important. You can also try what James did. James loved walking every evening. He used that time to listen to English podcasts. Sometimes he listened to stories, sometimes to short lessons. While walking, he would repeat what he heard in a low voice. If he heard the sentence, "The man opened the door," he would repeat, "The man opened the door." He said that walking helped him stay relaxed, and repeating helped him remember. This kind of listening plus speaking is a very strong way to improve. Now let's talk about the power of listening to different accents. In real life, English sounds different in different places. A person from the United States sounds different from someone in the UK or South Africa or Canada. Even people in the same country can have different ways of speaking. So, to become a better listener, you should try to hear English from many different voices. Let's talk about William, who used to only listen to American English. When he heard someone from the UK, he got confused. So he made a new goal. Every week, he listened to one short video or audio from a different country. First American English, then British, then Australian. At first, it was hard. But now, he says, "I can understand almost anyone. The accent doesn't scare me anymore." This made him more confident, and he learned new ways of saying things too. Another powerful method is listening more than once. Don't think you have to understand everything the first time. Even native speakers sometimes listen to something more than once. Let's say you hear a story about a man named Matthew who lost his keys. The first time you listen, just try to understand the main idea. For example, he lost his keys and couldn't enter his house. The second time, you listen for details. He looked in the garden, then called his wife. The third time, you listen for expressions. "I turned the house upside down." This means he searched everywhere. Listening many times helps your brain learn deeper, and you will start to recognize new words automatically. Here's a smart technique from a woman named Laura. She used to struggle with long English audios. She would get tired after 5 minutes. So she created a system. She listened in small parts. She would listen for 1 minute, pause, write down what she heard, then play the next part. She also used a notebook to write new words and expressions. After a week, she listened to the same story again, this time without stopping. She was surprised. She could understand everything. Step by step, she trained her ears and her mind. She said, "Breaking the story into pieces helped me build my listening like building a house one brick at a time." Another important idea is to listen to English related to your life. For example, if you are a teacher, try listening to stories or interviews with other teachers. If you are a shop owner, listen to business conversations. This helps because you already understand the situation. You can guess what words will be used. And when the topic is familiar, let me share a story about Robert, a taxi driver. Robert wanted to speak with tourists in English, but he didn't understand their questions, so he found short audios of conversations between drivers and passengers. he listened to them every day. After a while, he started using the same phrases. When a tourist asked, "How long will it take?" he already knew how to answer. He practiced while driving and said the sentences out loud. One day, a visitor said, "Your English is very clear." That gave Robert more motivation to keep going. Sometimes, it's helpful to ask questions to yourself while listening. This keeps your mind active. For example, if you hear a story about Helen, who forgot her umbrella and got wet in the rain, you can ask, "Why didn't she take the umbrella?" Or, "What happened after she got wet?" This kind of self-questioning helps you focus and remember better. And if you write your answers, you also improve your writing. Don't forget the power of prayer and patience. Some learners get frustrated. They think, "I listen every day, but I still don't understand fast English." But remember, learning a language is like planting a seed. It takes time, water, sunlight, and care. If you stay consistent, you will see the results. Ask Allah for help, stay patient, and trust the process. Even 5 minutes a day can make a big change in the long run. And here's a tip that helped many learners. Connect listening with speaking and writing. After listening to a story, try to speak about it out loud. Pretend you're telling your friend what you heard. You can say, "I listened to a story about a man who missed his bus. He had to walk in the rain, but then his friend gave him a ride. Now I want to show you how listening can become part of your whole life, not just during study time, but in your kitchen, on the bus, in the shop, while doing laundry, anywhere." Let's talk about how routine and habit can turn into your most powerful teachers. To help you understand, I'll share some more real life examples from English learners who made big progress with small steps. Let's meet Daniel. He works in an office from morning until evening. His job is busy. He answers emails, talks to clients, and fills out reports. But Daniel had one goal. He wanted to understand English news and real conversations. At first, he tried to watch long lessons at night, but he always felt tired. One day, he decided to change his plan. He downloaded short English news clips, 5 to 10 minutes long, and listened to one every morning while getting ready for work. He brushed his teeth, drank his tea, and listened to the story. Each day, he picked one new word and used it in a sentence. After 6 weeks, he said, "I can now understand the news without subtitles. It's becoming easier." He didn't study for hours. He just used a small part of his daily routine, and it changed everything. Then we have Sarah, who is a nurse. Her work is in a hospital, and it's very stressful. She helps people all day, and at night she feels tired. But she knew she wanted to improve her English listening. She asked herself, "When can I listen without needing to stop working?" She realized she could listen while walking to the hospital. So, every morning and evening, during her walk, she played one English story. Sometimes the story was about health, sometimes about family life. When she didn't understand a word, she didn't stop. She just guessed the meaning and kept going. After 3 months, her ears became stronger. She said, "At work, I can now understand English-speaking patients better. I feel more confident." She used the walking time she already had and made it part of her learning. One very helpful tip is to repeat what you hear, even if it's just a few words. Let me introduce you to Tom, who is a delivery driver. He spends hours in his van, going from house to house. He made a plan. Every time he heard a sentence in English, he would pause the audio and repeat it. For example, if the story said, "I forgot my wallet at home," Tom would say the same sentence out loud. At first, he felt a little shy, but since he was alone in the van, no one could hear him. After doing this for a few weeks, he said his speaking also improved. He was not just listening. He was training his mouth to say the same words he heard. That made his listening and speaking grow together. Let's look at another way to make your listening stronger: visualizing the story. This means when you listen to something, try to see the story in your mind like a picture or a movie. Let's say you hear a story about Emma, who went to the market, bought some apples, and met her friend. As you listen, imagine the market, the apples in her bag, and the smile on her friend's face. This helps you stay focused and remember the details. A man named Nathan used this method every day. He said, "When I listen and picture the story, I understand more. The words feel real." Your brain remembers pictures better than only words. So use your imagination. It makes a big difference. Another great tip is to talk about what you listen to. Let me give you the example of David and his wife Grace. They have dinner together every evening. One day, David said, "Let's try something new. After dinner, let's share one thing we listened to today in English." Grace agreed. So each night, they both shared a short story or audio they heard. One night, David talked about a story where a man's car broke down and he had to walk for 2 hours. Grace listened, then asked, "What happened at the end? Did someone help him?" That started a fun conversation in English. They were not only practicing listening, but also speaking and thinking in English. David said, "This is the best part of my day now." You don't need to be perfect. Just try to speak, share, and enjoy the process. Now let's talk about listening with purpose. This means listening with a goal in your mind. For example, if your goal is to understand how people ask for help in English, then focus on stories or conversations where someone needs assistance. Let's say a woman named Anna wanted to understand how to make requests politely in English. She searched for short role-play audios where people asked for directions or help in the store. She listened again and again. She wrote down useful expressions like, "Could you please help me?" or "Would you mind telling me where the office is?" After listening to many examples, she started using those phrases in real life. When someone asked her something, she replied clearly. She didn't just listen, she listened with purpose. Listening doesn't have to be difficult or boring. You can make it fun by choosing topics that you love. For example, Peter, a farmer, enjoys hearing stories about farming, crops, and tools. He found English podcasts that talk about agriculture. Every day while checking his fields, he listens to those episodes. He said, "When the topic is about farming, I understand better and enjoy it more." So think about what you love. Maybe it's cooking, health, business, or family life. Try to find audio in English on those topics. It will be easier to follow because your brain already knows the subject. One more tip is to check your understanding. After you listen to something, pause and ask yourself, what was the story about? Who was in the story? What happened first? What happened next? This kind of self-check makes your learning deeper. For example, if you listen to a story about John who missed his train and met an old friend, try to say it in your own words. You could say, "John went to the train station. He was late. He met his friend Tom. They had coffee and talked about old memories." Saying the story again helps your brain remember the order of events and important words. Let's talk about one more learner, Isabella, a teacher who also wanted to improve her English listening. She created a notebook she called her listening diary. Every day she listened to a short English story. Then she wrote 3 things in her diary: what the story was about, 1 new word she learned, 1 sentence she liked and wanted to remember. After 2 months, her notebook was full of useful words, expressions, and summaries. She could go back and read them any time. Isabella said, "I didn't only improve my listening, my writing and vocabulary also became stronger." If you want to grow your English, make your own listening diary. It will become your personal guide and memory tool. To further improve your listening, let's talk about different accents and speech speeds. When you're learning English, you often hear different accents, and this can be tricky. Some people speak slowly, while others speak very quickly. So, what should you do? Well, get used to different types of speech. If you only listen to one accent or one speed, it might feel easy at first, but real life isn't like that. People all over the world speak in different ways. Let's take Michael as an example. Michael lives in the UK, but he works with people from all over the world. At first, he found it hard to understand people with different accents. For example, he found it hard to understand Maria, who is from Spain. She spoke English, but with a strong Spanish accent, and it was hard for Michael to understand her at work. Instead of giving up, Michael decided to practice with different accents. He listened to podcasts with accents from the US, Australia, and even India. Michael said, "At first, it was difficult, but now I feel more confident in every conversation. I am used to hearing different ways people speak." This is an important step in developing your listening skills. Listen to different accents, and you'll get better at understanding English speakers, no matter where they're from. Next, let's talk about listening to natural conversation. We often think listening to slow, clear English is the best way to learn, but real conversations are much faster and use many more casual phrases. To really improve your listening, you need to practice understanding natural, everyday speech. Emma, a lawyer, was having trouble with fast-paced conversations in English. She used to only listen to formal English podcasts. But then she decided to switch. She started listening to podcasts about everyday topics, like shopping, sports, and even news discussions. She said, "At first, I didn't understand most of it, but little by little, I started picking up words, phrases, and even slang." Emma now listens to interviews with friends, casual discussions about daily life, and even informal podcasts. By doing this, her understanding of natural speech has improved dramatically. Her advice is to listen to real conversations as much as possible, even if they are a little harder at first. Let's also talk about the importance of context. Sometimes, when you're listening to something, there will be words you don't understand. This can make you feel stuck or frustrated. But don't panic. This is where context becomes a powerful tool. Tom used this strategy when he was listening to a podcast about business. In the middle of the podcast, there was a word he didn't know, and it was really frustrating. But instead of stopping and looking it up right away, he decided to continue listening. He paid attention to the words around it. He guessed the meaning of the new word based on what came before and after it. By the end of the podcast, he was able to understand what the word meant. Tom said, "I learned to guess the meaning of words from the context. It's not perfect, but it's better than stopping every time I don't know a word." So, when you listen and don't understand everything, just keep going and pay attention to the context. It will help you understand the bigger picture. Now, let's talk about how repetition can help. This is something you may have heard before. Practice makes perfect. This is especially true with listening. The more you listen to something, the easier it becomes. Rachel, a student, was studying for her English exams. She was preparing for the listening section, and at first she found it difficult to understand the recordings. So instead of listening to each recording just once, she listened to each one 3 or 4 times. The first time, she tried to understand the general meaning. The second time, she focused on the details. The third time, she wrote down key words. By the time she finished listening, she had a clear understanding of the whole audio. Rachel said, "Repetition was the key. I didn't get discouraged. The more I listened, the more I understood. Repetition helps you improve your comprehension and builds your listening muscles, just like exercise builds your body. But don't forget, listening isn't only about understanding words, it's also about understanding feelings. English speakers often show their emotions through their voice. They might speak louder when they're excited or quieter when they're sad. Liam, a teacher, practiced listening to how people express their feelings in English. He would listen carefully to different audio recordings and pay attention not only to the words, but also to how the speaker said them. Was their voice high or low? Did they speak quickly or slowly? Liam said, "Understanding emotions in speech is so important. When I listen to my students, I understand them better now." I know when they are happy, frustrated, or nervous by the way they speak. This is an important skill that you can improve by practicing with a variety of audio materials. Next, let's talk about using technology to boost your listening skills. Nowadays, we have many apps and websites that can help us with language learning. Kevin, a software developer, used an app on his phone to listen to English podcasts and audiobooks. Every time he heard a word he didn't understand, he paused the audio and checked the meaning. He repeated the word aloud several times, then continued listening. Kevin said, "I didn't use a dictionary all the time. Sometimes I used the app's vocabulary feature to learn new words, and I could hear them used in context." By using technology like this, you can have language lessons at any time. The key is to be consistent and try to practice regularly. Let's look at another strategy that's really important: listening to English in different situations. Helen, a businesswoman, had to travel a lot for work. She didn't always have time to study English in the traditional way, so she decided to use her travel time wisely. Whenever she was on a flight or in a taxi, she would listen to short English podcasts. Sometimes she listened to podcasts related to her job, while other times she listened to stories or news. Helen said, "At first I thought I couldn't learn much in such short periods, but the more I did it, the more my listening skills improved." Helen's advice is to listen whenever you can, even on a plane, in a taxi, or during a walk. You can always use those small moments to practice your English listening. Lastly, let's discuss how setting small listening goals can help you stay motivated. Jack is a writer, and he used to get frustrated when he couldn't understand everything in an English book or podcast. But instead of focusing on the parts he didn't understand, he set small goals. His goal was simple: I will understand at least 80% of the story by the end. Jack worked towards that goal, and as he improved, he raised his goal to 90% and then 100%. Jack said, "The goals gave me something to focus on, and I celebrated my progress along the way." Setting small, achievable goals makes learning feel less overwhelming and more rewarding. These examples show how many different ways you can improve your English listening skills. It's all about creating the right habits, staying consistent, and focusing on progress, not perfection. Whether you're on the bus, at work, or doing your daily tasks, there's always a way to fit listening practice into your life. Another great tip for improving your listening is to immerse yourself in English as much as possible. The more you hear English in different contexts, the easier it becomes to understand. You can do this by surrounding yourself with English media, like news, radio, or even TV shows. Laura, a nurse, wanted to improve her listening for her job. She had to communicate with English-speaking patients, but sometimes she found it difficult to understand their questions or symptoms. To improve, Laura started listening to English podcasts while she was walking her dog. She made it a routine. I noticed that after a few months, I started catching words I didn't understand before. It felt like my ears were getting used to the sounds and the rhythm of the language, she said. Immersion is key. Even if you can't understand everything at first, keep exposing yourself to English. Over time, your brain will start to recognize patterns, and your listening ability will improve. A great way to immerse yourself in English is by watching videos with subtitles. If you're just starting out, turn on subtitles in your native language, and as you progress, switch to English subtitles. Mark, a student from Canada, started watching his favorite TV shows with English subtitles. He says, "I was surprised how much I learned just from reading the subtitles while watching the show. I could see the words, hear how they were pronounced, and understand the context." At first, Mark found it challenging, but soon he began to notice his understanding improve. He advises, start with shows or movies you already know, so you're not distracted by the plot. This way, you can focus entirely on the language and improve your listening skills. Challenge yourself with different accents. One aspect of listening that often trips up learners is understanding different accents. Whether it's an American, British, or Australian accent, each has its own unique way of speaking. But don't be discouraged. Tom, a student from New York, faced a big challenge when he was listening to British podcasts for the first time. At first, the accents felt confusing, and he couldn't understand the speakers. However, instead of giving up, Tom decided to challenge himself. He started listening to British radio shows, podcasts, and even watching British TV shows with English subtitles. At first, I would pause every minute because I couldn't understand some words. But with time, I started to recognize patterns in their speech. It wasn't long before I was able to understand most of what they were saying, he says. The key here is not to avoid accents that you find difficult, but to engage with them actively. Exposing yourself to different accents will make you more flexible in your listening, and soon, understanding different English varieties will become second nature. Slow down the speed of audio. Sometimes it's not the vocabulary that's challenging, it's the speed at which people speak. This is especially true in podcasts or fast-paced conversations. Many podcast platforms offer an option to change the playback speed. Sarah, a software developer, was struggling to keep up with fast-paced conversations during her English lessons. She couldn't follow the speaker because they were speaking too quickly. To solve this, Sarah started slowing down the audio by 0.5x or even 0.75x. She would listen at a slower pace until she could understand everything. It was a huge help. Once I was comfortable with the slower speed, I started speeding it up gradually until I could listen at normal speed without difficulty, Sarah explains. This method can be really helpful for beginners or intermediate learners. If you find a podcast or video too fast, simply slow it down. As your listening improves, you can gradually return to the normal speed. Listen to real-life conversations. Another great way to improve your listening is by listening to real conversations instead of scripted dialogues. Mia, a teacher, started listening to interviews and everyday conversations on YouTube. She said, "I used to only listen to podcasts with perfect English and clear pronunciation. But then I realized that real-life conversations are a lot messier. People interrupt, speak faster, and use informal language. Once I started listening to real-life situations, I became much more confident in understanding everyday speech." Mia's story shows that listening to natural, unscripted conversations will give you the confidence to understand native speakers in real situations. So, look for videos with interviews or casual chats. These types of audio will better prepare you for how people speak in real life. Another helpful strategy is to listen to the same audio multiple times. Sometimes, listening to something once just isn't enough. You might miss important details, or certain phrases may be hard to catch. Jack, a college student, used to listen to English podcasts only once. Afterward, he felt frustrated because he didn't remember much of what he had heard. Jack decided to try something different. He started listening to the same podcast episode 3 or 4 times in a row. The first time, he focused on understanding the main idea. The second time, he tried to catch more specific details. By the third and fourth listen, he was able to pick up words and expressions he missed earlier. This method really helped me. I realized that the more times I listened, the more my brain started to make connections between words. Jack said, "Listening multiple times helps reinforce what you've learned and builds your confidence. It also helps you catch nuances and small details that you might have missed during the first listen." Take advantage of audio transcripts. If you're struggling with certain parts of a podcast or video, using transcripts can be a huge help. Many podcasts, audiobooks, and YouTube videos provide transcripts of the audio. Anna, a language learner from Spain, used transcripts to improve her listening. I would listen to a podcast and follow along with the transcript. If I didn't understand a word, I would pause and look it up. Then I'd listen to that part. Again, she says, using transcripts allows you to see the written form of what you're hearing, which can help reinforce the connection between sounds and words. Once you're comfortable, you can try listening without the transcript to challenge yourself further. This method is great for learners who want to catch words they might have missed and to see how things are spelled. Practice listening to different topics. Another good strategy is to vary the topics you listen to. If you always listen to podcasts about business or politics, you might miss out on learning vocabulary from other areas. James, an entrepreneur, started listening to podcasts on topics like history, science, and pop culture to broaden his vocabulary. He realized that by exposing himself to different subjects, he became more adaptable in his listening skills. When you're familiar with a variety of topics, it becomes easier to understand conversations in different contexts. You're not just learning words. You're also learning how to recognize ideas and information in different fields, James explains. This is a great way to improve your overall listening and expand your vocabulary. Use listening apps to test your skills. There are many apps designed to help improve your listening comprehension. Linda, a busy professional, used a language learning app with listening exercises that gradually increased in difficulty. At first, I couldn't understand anything, but as I practiced, the exercises became easier. The app would test my comprehension with questions after each audio clip. This helped me measure my progress and identify areas where I needed improvement, she says. Apps often have built-in features like quizzes and feedback that can make learning fun and interactive. If you're not already using a listening app, it's worth checking out some popular options to help you track and improve your progress. Let's not forget about shadowing again, but this time with a twist. Try shadowing with different types of speakers. For example, you could shadow a speaker who speaks very slowly and clearly, and then challenge yourself by shadowing a speaker who talks faster and uses informal language. This will help you improve both your comprehension and your ability to speak naturally. Mike, a journalist, used this method to improve his ability to follow different speaking styles. I shadow different podcasts, from those with formal speakers to those with casual conversational language. It gave me a broad understanding of how to approach different speaking situations, he said. Shadowing with different kinds of speakers exposes you to more diverse speaking styles and helps you become more adaptable in your listening. Listening to podcasts during different daily activities is another great technique. Sometimes it's hard to find time to sit down and focus on listening practice. That's where multitasking comes in. Emily, a marketing manager, found that listening to podcasts while commuting or cleaning her house helped her improve her listening skills. At first, I couldn't focus on the podcasts while doing other things, but over time, I got better at understanding even when I wasn't sitting down with full attention, she said. By making listening practice a part of your everyday routine, you can get an extra practice without having to set aside extra time. Whether you're cooking, walking, or commuting, there's always an opportunity to listen to English. Ask questions and discuss what you hear. Engaging with others is one of the best ways to reinforce your listening skills. George, a teacher, practices listening by discussing podcasts with his colleagues. After I listen to a podcast, I talk about it with my friends or coworkers. We discuss what we heard, and this helps me process the information. George says, discussing the content you've listened to with someone else helps you better. Understand the material and remember it longer. When you have to explain what you've learned, you strengthen your ability to retain that information. You could even join online forums or language exchange groups where people talk about podcasts or articles they've listened to. Listen with a purpose. Rather than just listening for fun, set specific goals for each listening practice session. David, a lawyer, started listening with a goal of learning 5 new words in each podcast. I would write down the new words, look them up, and make sure I could use them in a sentence. By doing this, I was able to improve both my listening and vocabulary, he says. Listening with a purpose makes your practice more intentional, and you'll notice your listening improving faster. Now remember, everyone's listening journey is different, and that's okay. It's normal to feel challenged at first, but the key is consistency. Whether you're practicing with podcasts, conversations, or audiobooks, the most important thing is to stay motivated and keep going. Over time, you'll see improvements in your comprehension, vocabulary, and even speaking skills. Keep up the hard work and trust that every effort you put in will pay off. Repetition with intent. One of the key ways to boost your listening comprehension is by repeating the same material over and over. You might have heard that repetition is essential in language learning, but let's look at it more closely. Charlie, a university student, struggled to understand spoken English when he first started. He used to listen to a podcast episode once and thought he would get it, but soon realized that he was missing a lot of details. That's when he started repeating the same podcast episode 2 or 3 times. At first, I thought it would be boring, but I found that the more I listened to the same episode, the better I understood it. By the 3rd time, I was picking up words I missed earlier, and even the rhythm of the speaker became easier to follow, Charlie says. Repetition allows your brain to connect the dots between different sounds, words, and phrases. Don't be afraid to listen to the same content multiple times, as each repetition helps you better understand the language. Use interactive listening. Sometimes just listening passively isn't enough. To take your listening skills to the next level, you can try interactive listening exercises. These involve listening to audio clips and then actively answering questions or completing tasks based on what you hear. Rachel, a freelance designer, found a lot of success with this method. I would listen to a podcast or a short story and then try to answer specific questions about it, like, what did the speaker mention about their job? Michi, or what was the main point of the conversation? This really helped me focus on the important details and improved my understanding of the main message, Rachel says. This method forces you to pay attention to the content, making sure that you're not just hearing the words, but also processing the information. You can find interactive listening materials online, or even create your own questions from the content you listen to. Listen for key phrases. Another strategy that can help you improve your listening skills is to listen for key phrases rather than trying to catch every single word. Martin, a travel enthusiast, shares his experience. When I was listening to podcasts on different topics, I used to get frustrated because I couldn't understand every word. But then I realized that it was more important to understand the key phrases that the speaker was using, especially when they were talking about the main idea. So, I started listening for those phrases and patterns, and that made everything clearer, Martin explains. By focusing on key phrases, those words or expressions that carry the main meaning, you can better understand the flow of conversation, even if you miss a few words here and there. This will also help you develop a natural rhythm when speaking. Use visual aids to support listening. A powerful technique is to combine listening with visuals. This is a great way to reinforce your understanding of what you are hearing. Sophie, a writer, started watching English videos with English subtitles, which helped her connect the spoken words to their written form. When I watched videos with English subtitles, I could immediately see the words on screen. It helped me link the pronunciation with the spelling, and over time, I started understanding the audio much better, Sophie says. Subtitles also give you a visual cue that makes it easier to follow the speaker, especially when they use words or phrases you're not familiar with. Once you're comfortable, you can try watching without subtitles to challenge your listening further. Try different audio formats. Another excellent approach to improving listening skills is by listening to different types of audio formats. Don't limit yourself to just podcasts or news reports. Emily, a business consultant, found that listening to audiobooks was an amazing way to improve her listening. Audiobooks helped me to get used to longer stretches of listening. Since the audio is often slower and more deliberate, I could focus on the meaning of what was being said rather than just catching individual words, Emily explains. Audiobooks offer a chance to hear well-pronounced, clear English, and they often have a slower pace than typical podcasts. They are especially great for focusing on the flow of sentences and the tone of voice. Try listening to a variety of audio formats like audiobooks, radio shows, interviews, or even YouTube videos. Every format has a unique style, and you'll get better at recognizing the difference between formal and informal speech. Engage with real-life English content. Let's talk about using real-life English in your listening practice. Daniel, an entrepreneur, made a habit of listening to customer service calls. He worked in customer support, so he thought it would be helpful to listen to how native speakers communicate with clients. At first, it was tough because the conversations were quick and there were a lot of interruptions. But over time, I learned to listen for the main points and figure out how to handle the conversation in English. Daniel shares, engaging with real-life situations like listening to customer service calls, interviews, or conversations in cafes exposes you to the natural, fast-paced speech of native speakers. These conversations are often full of slang, idioms, and informal expressions, which will make your listening skills even sharper. It also prepares you for real-world situations where people don't always speak slowly or clearly. Improve pronunciation alongside listening. Another valuable strategy is to work on your pronunciation while improving your listening. Pronunciation is closely linked with listening skills. Jack, a writer from London, discovered this when he was struggling to catch the pronunciation of certain words. When I was listening to podcasts, I couldn't catch some of the words because I didn't know how they were pronounced. Once I started practicing pronunciation on my own, I noticed that I could understand spoken English much better, Jack explains. Working on your pronunciation while you listen helps you connect the way words sound with the way they are written. It's also beneficial because when you speak more clearly, you'll naturally find it easier to understand others. It's all about creating that connection between the spoken and written form of the language. Use technology to your advantage. We live in a time where technology can make language learning much easier. There are many apps and tools designed to improve listening skills. Rachel, a university student, used language apps like Spotify, BBC, Learning English, and SpeechLink to practice her listening skills. I used to listen to music all the time, but then I started listening to English learning podcasts and short stories on these apps. They gave me the option to slow down the audio and repeat sections, which helped a lot, Rachel says. There are also speech recognition apps where you can practice speaking and then get feedback on your pronunciation. This can be a great way to improve your listening and speaking skills simultaneously. Don't hesitate to take full advantage of these modern tools. They can accelerate your learning journey. Set listening goals. Another helpful tip is to set listening goals for yourself. It could be something like listening to a certain number of podcasts per week, understanding 80% of a conversation, or mastering specific vocabulary from your listening practice. Sophia, a busy lawyer, used this method to stay motivated. I set myself the goal of understanding 80% of a podcast every week. It pushed me to listen more attentively and focus on the important parts of each episode, Sophia shares. Setting clear, achievable goals keeps you focused and provides a sense of accomplishment as you progress. Having a goal to reach also motivates you to keep listening, even when it feels challenging. Practice. Listening to different speeds. Speaking of listening speed, it's also a good idea to practice listening at different speeds. When you're comfortable, you can experiment with speeding up the audio. James, a marketing professional, started listening to podcasts at a faster speed to improve his listening skills. At first, I couldn't keep up when I increased the speed, but I kept trying. Now I can easily follow podcasts at a 1.5x or 2x speed without missing much, James explains. Increasing the speed of the audio forces your brain to process information more quickly, which trains you to understand spoken English at a faster pace. This technique is especially useful for advanced learners who want to keep improving their listening speed. Use a dictation method. One of the most effective ways to improve listening skills is by practicing dictation. This is a method where you listen to an audio clip, pause it, and write down exactly what you hear. Lily, a nurse, used this method to help with her listening and writing skills. I would listen to short audio clips from news articles or podcasts and write down every word I heard. It was challenging, but I saw a huge improvement in my listening and spelling, Lily says. Dictation helps train your ear to catch every word and detail in the audio, and it can be an excellent exercise for improving both your listening and writing skills at the same time. Take notes as you listen. Finally, when you're listening to podcasts or any audio, make sure you take notes. John, a teacher from Toronto, found that taking notes during listening practice helped him better organize the information in his mind. I used to listen without writing anything down, but when I started taking notes, I realized that I could understand the material much better because I was processing it more actively, John says. Taking notes encourages active listening, which means you're not just hearing words passively, but engaging with them. By writing down key points, vocabulary, and ideas, you'll improve your ability to recall and use what you've heard. The goal with all these strategies is to keep challenging yourself and pushing your limits. With consistent practice, you'll notice a significant improvement in your listening skills. Listening is one of the most powerful ways to enhance your overall language proficiency, and as you continue applying these tips, you'll see greater progress Keep up the great work, and remember that every step forward is a victory on your learning journey. Thank you for listening to this episode of the English Pod Community. I hope you found these tips helpful and are feeling more confident in your ability to improve your listening skills. Remember, the key to success is consistent practice and actively engaging with the content you listen to. Don't forget, as you listen to real-life stories and examples, your listening and writing skills will naturally get better. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to press the like button and subscribe so you can stay updated with new content designed to help you improve your English every day. If you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to leave a comment below. I love hearing from you. Keep practicing, and I'll see you in the next episode. Keep up the great work and stay motivated. Happy learning!